If you put a pro player like Chovy or Zeka versus a random diamond player and you let them simulate 100 1v1s, how many of those 1v1s would the diamond player win? Zero. Absolutely zero. The diamond player will get consistently destroyed because the pro player will use strategies and concepts that the diamond player isn't even aware of. And in this video, I'm going to be sharing the wave management strategies that pro players use to win the lane without counterplay. And yes, these will blow your mind. So let me know in the comments which strategy shocked you the most and made you go like, what the hell? I hope you guys enjoy. So first of all, why is wave management so important? If you have control over the waves and you can manage them well, you can get control over the trades. Control over the trades means control over the lane, and control over the lane means control over the game because you can always move first to place, be early on objectives, and be proactive on the map. So winning in the wave states means winning in the game control, and you have more access into doing stuff on the map. Hence why this is such an important concept that we're going to be discussing today. So the first concept is going to be the understanding of how wave management affects trading. And we're going to be talking about the concepts of trading windows. Because trading is not just randomly fighting each other in lane. No, trading is actually trading resources. And a wave, a minion, is a resource because it generates gold. So the goal for you as a mid laner, or it's any other champion in the game, is to make sure that you are looking to trade when the enemy is forced to last hit. So either of two things is going to happen. Either going to hit the minion and you can trade onto them for free, or they're going to miss the minion and they're going to trade back onto you, which means you get a +1 CS advantage, and you can later invest it into stats. So it's a win-win for you and a lose-lose for the enemies. We're going to be utilizing this concept of creating trading windows. That means that we're going to manage the minion waves in such a way that her minions die at a different time than my minions, which means that I can have my full mental stack upon trading with the kill without losing any minions myself. And that means that she is going to be forced to drop minions or get hit. So in this first example, it's the perfect example. It's the Syndra versus Kill lane, in which that Kill is a champ that cannot manage the wave states. So it's literally you versus you. How good are you at applying these concepts so you can put as much pressure as possible into the kill? So what I'm going to be doing, since this is an offensive maneuver, is I'm going to make sure that her minions die at a different time than mine. I'm going to get into the specifics of how I do that later. But in this situation, look at the minion HP bars. This one's dropping sooner than this one drops. That means that I can now pressure her. I see that her minion's dropping low. I know she wants to last hit it. I can now pressure onto this minion, Q onto the last hit her. And it means that all the other minions I can now hit myself. Guess what? Now I have no minions to last hit myself, and I can instantly force my attention back onto the kill right here. And you see that this puts me in a position where I can hit kill every single time that she can go for a minion, which puts her in a position where she's forced to give every single creep or use an ability for it, or at least get pressured one way or another. And because I utilize this strategy where I desync my minion HP timers and her minion HP timers, that means I can constantly harass her. Look at that one. I intentionally hit that minion, kill it before the next minion here dies. And I know that this next minion right here doesn't get targeted by any of these other creeps, which means that I can very easily harass her onto this minion without me losing this creep. This is calling creation of trading windows, and it's not really, it's really uninteractive in this particular matchup because of the fact that Kill cannot really manage the waves very well as well. This is why Kill mid also doesn't get played in pro play, because of the fact that she can't respond, she can't manage, she has no agency. And you see that under tower right here is a very similar principle. Whenever I hit all of my minions, I can just easily harass her under the turret and pressure her onto all of these minions. You see that she's forced to drop creeps because otherwise I would contest her. Now I'm going to do the exact same thing on the wave afterwards right here, which is, look at that. I make sure that this minion dies before this minion drops low, which means that I can hit her and chunk her in the lane. And this is going to slowly give me an advantage because she's forced to drop minions or take damage. And that's going to slowly amount to a 10, 20, 30, 40 CS lead, etc. And you can see that I'm constantly applying the same concept right here. This is really hard to do, especially if you play versus other champions that can manage the wave. Then you got to suddenly take into account on what they are going to be doing towards the wave as well. Then you're actually playing chess with each other. But It's really good to be aware of this concept, and especially into these type of lanes like kill, it's very easy to practice and also execute upon. If you're serious about improving, check out the MLA, link's gonna be in the description. This is your one-stop shop at becoming better as a player. It's gotten everything. Full champion guides, daily coaching sessions ran by me, Shock, Curtis, and many other insane coaches. Fundamentals, all of the concepts that you don't know about, expanded upon, matchup breakdowns, bonus resources, everything that you need to know to climb. So now that we know how creating trading windows looks, we're going to be taking a look at the first strategy, and that strategy is hitting the caster minion on wave 1. Now, with the wave rules, what happens on wave 1 is that if no one interacts with the minions, all of the caster minions will start aggroing one specific melee minion. So what's going to happen is that all of these melee minions will then die at the same time. What we can do is there's also a bit of a code in the game that on the first wave, caster minions will interact a little bit differently, that if you hit one of the caster minions in the first wave, what's going to happen is that they're going to redirect aggro onto you temporarily, and then afterwards redirect aggro onto the minions, which is then going to make sure that 2 caster minions are going to be hitting 1 melee minion, which means that all these minions will then die at a different time, which is going to allow you to create extra trading opportunities. These trading windows that we just talked about in the previous segment, very, very important to note. So this is an example in which that we're going to be watching Chovy at Worlds last year, which is probably by far his best game of the tournament. It was insanely sexy, the laning phase. It's crazy what he did here. And what we're going to be seeing is that he's going to be hitting on the first wave the caster minions right here. Why does he hit the caster minions? Well, you can see right now that by hitting the caster minions, the minion aggro is going to be swapping up, which means that he's going to get more opportunities to harass Yone whenever he's going to be going for creeps. And another way to do that as well is by hitting the enemy. So if the enemy gives you the aggro by hitting them, you can also hit them, swap up the aggro, and then you get a very similar position, because now these minions will then start targeting, for example, the closest one right here, and this one will start targeting right there, and then this one won't get targeted at all, and all 3 will die at a different time, which means that you get new opportunities constantly to harass the enemy laner, because they now need to walk 3 times instead of only once for hitting all 3 of the minions at the same time. So I want to note a very important thing about the timing of out-attacking this minion, because sometimes the timing can actually be off. And if you mistime it, you won't redirect the aggro. Why is that the case? Well, if the minion out-attacks in the air, what's going to happen is that the minion will not re-aggro. That's how it's programmed. Everyone's seen the Knight clip where he's constantly out-attacking Galio behind the wave without getting targeted. That's the exact same principle. But we want to intentionally hit the minion at a timer where the out-attack's not in the air. So what Chovy does in this first time is he out-attacks his middle minion, while this out-attack right here is in the air. So on his first out-attack, the aggro does not swap up. So he needs to out-attack again to swap up the aggro. And he does that right now, right here, when the out-attacks barely landed right now, which means that the minions do indeed change aggro. To confirm if the minions change aggro, there's an indicator in your normal games. In the games that you're going to be playing, I'm going to be showing you right here in the kill example right here. What you'll see is if you do the timing correctly, you'll see an indicator slightly pop up right here, which means that you know that you did it correctly and you don't have to invest another auto-attack. This means the aggro, that the minions will aggro you, and you can now safely create more trading windows. So in this next example, we're going to be taking a look at how a 1600 LP challenger player is going to do this strategy upon caps. This is a VOD from yesterday, still very, very recent. And what he does is he first out-attacks this melee minion. I'm going to explain why that's the case as well. And then he out-attacks the middle caster, which is then going to force caps to eventually walk up towards his creep. Look at how these windows are being created right now. And that means that caps is forced to take a shit ton of damage right here onto these minions, and puts him in just a very, very bad position in the lane. So why does Corki out-attack this melee minion as well? Well, there's a very good reason why he does so. This doesn't have anything to do with creating trading windows upon caps. No, it has just everything to do with being able to last hit himself. Because if he does not out-attack this first melee minion, what's going to happen is that all 3 of these melee minions will die at the same time, and that he's going to either need to invest in ability to hit them, which means you drop lane pressure, or what's going to happen is that he's just going to miss 1 or 2 because they die at the same time. And you can only attack once per, I don't know, 0.7 seconds. I don't know the exact timer. But that's why they hit also a melee minion, so you can get all of the creeps while harassing the enemy. So like there's the offensive strategy of creating trading windows, there's also the defensive strategy of denying trading windows. And this plays in the concept that we want the minions to die at the same time. So whenever she needs the last hit, I want the last hit. That's going to overwhelm her mental stack, make it hard for her to trade onto me. Or it's going to force her to drop a minion to trade onto me, which is also going to be completely fine. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be managing and out-attacking the minions in such a way that I'm going to try to make these minions die at the same time, which means that in this case, the lame booty Orianna is going to struggle to harass me in this lane. So you see right here, those minions die at the same time. You see that I am hitting this minion while she's hitting this minion, both of them dying at the same time, which means that it's just really hard for her to find trading opportunities. Look at the next one. I'm hitting this minion while that minion's dying as well, preventing her basically harassing me, even though she is the stronger early lane champion than me. That's the idea behind denying trading windows. So the next strategy we're going to be using is mainly used in mage v mage matchups in which both parties actually have a lot of trading tools upon each other. And one of the things that we're going to be using is dragging the minion towards the back of the lane. So why is this such a powerful thing in these mage v mage matchups? You see that Aura does it. I'm going to explain to you guys how she does it as well. What's going to happen is that if you drag the minion back to the lane right here, Orianna now cannot trade upon you. And you see that Aurora in this case started E, has a very long E cooldown. So if this minion would be right here, Orianna can just walk up, Q the Aurora whenever Aurora needs the last hit. And she's then going to be forced to make a bad decision between either hitting Ori back or hitting the minion, which is not going to be good for her. So she's going to lose HP. But because she drags the minion backwards, she actually denies a trading window from the Orianna. So what we see right here is that she uses her cooldown onto Orianna, grabs the minion all the way back here, which prevents counterplay from Orianna and also allows Aurora to actually keep out-attacking the minions and keep up the push in the lane a little bit, which is otherwise very hard if you play a champion that has such a long cooldown as Aurora in the E in the early game. That's why a lot of Aurora usually start Q. So this is a strategy that you mainly use in mage v mage if you're playing a matchup that is not generally favored for you when it comes to early game cooldowns, or that the enemies, or you want to be denying the enemies the first trading opportunity while keeping access towards the minions. And the way that we're going to be doing that is we want to make sure that we auto attack the first minion before they interact with the next creep. What's going to happen is then it's going to direct aggro towards us onto Aurora, which means that we can, if we keep auto attacking up, keep up the aggro, which means that it drags up all the way back here. So a few things to note is that the timing of these auto attacks can sometimes get a little bit funky. You need to practice this a lot in practice tool and in custom modes to get the good feeling of it, especially per champion, because every champ has different auto attack speed timers, and you want to also drag it towards the right direction. You don't want to drag it too far, but you also don't want to drag it too close. Otherwise, the minion will re-aggro and it will potentially aggro upon these creeps again, which means that, yes, it's still slightly right here and slightly close towards your side, which is already okay, but it's not like fully back, which means that you can easily auto-attack it whenever you want. So this one, mainly used in mage v mage, very niche, but really, really powerful tool if you're able to utilize this consistently. So the next concept is one of my favorites, and this is a must know, because what we're going to do is we're going to manipulate minion aggro to take the wave towards a better position in the lane. And this can be both used in range v melee, melee v melee, or either range v ranged. The idea behind this strategy is that we out-attack the enemy, which is going to aggro the minions. And then we're going to be utilizing the fact that the minions will aggro us to drag the minions toward a specific part of the lane. We can drag it up, we can drag it down, we can drag it backwards, we can drag it forwards if we want to. We can do whatever we want, but usually it's mainly used to drag the minions backwards. Why do we do that? Well, then if we drag the minions backwards, the enemies need to walk up further in the lane to get access towards the minions. They're further away from the tower, which means that they're less safe. And when the wave is closer towards your side, you can build a bigger slow build and access the minions a little bit more, because you now have an easier time because you're closer to your turret, more opportunities where you can actually hit the minions without being exposed. So in this example, we're going to be taking a look at the Chovy example. He hits the Yone, and look what happens is that he drags the minions back. Versus this melee matchup, why does he do that? Well, that means that the minions now center right here instead of in the middle of the lane. That means that Yone needs to walk up deeper in the lane and is going to get hit by more out attacks from Smolder right here. And what he does is he does that very smartly, is that he actually puts the wave so far back, and Yone now just cannot really access the minion wave right here, especially when he's going to be reaching level 2. Look at where the second wave stacked up. This is a massive difference that this wave stacks up comparatively towards even here, or what you see a lot of people do when they do a 2-wave crash is even here. What's going to happen is Smaller now reaches level 2 while Yone is level 1. And that means that he can now zone Yone of experience with his level 2 advantage. Otherwise, he's going to take this very shit trade because he tries to get the experience himself. Incredibly powerful strategy in ranged v melee. It also works in different parts of the game, in, for example, melee v melee or range v range. Let's take a look at a range v range example. So in this example, we're going to take a look at a classic mage v mage matchup, and a lot of people struggle in this matchup because it's so volatile and so trade heavy. And what you'll find is that the one that gets the slow push into the enemies will usually find better trading opportunities and have an easier time trading upon them because they'll reach level up spikes sooner. That's why there's always this battle for having the slow push into the enemy. And how do you do that? Well, you can do that by manipulating minion aggro. One of the key things that you can do is you can auto-attack the enemy laner. Because what's going to happen is that all of these minions that usually were actually out-attacking your creeps will now start to re-aggro and they'll slightly get towards you. That means that they'll stop auto-attacking your minion wave, and that means that your minion wave will keep auto-attacking them and keep damaging them while they stop damaging you, your minions, and you can then actually potentially draw them back, which means that you get more access to auto-attack these minions and get that slow push towards the enemies. And in the meantime, your minions don't take any damage from the enemy minion wave, which means that you can, by out-attacking the enemy champion and trading a little bit, even though you lose a little bit of HP, if you trade these out-attacks, you can draw the minions in a better position where you're safer, and when the minions stop out-attacking you and re-aggro, they are not hitting your minions, so you can eventually build a slow build. And you see that's exactly what Showmaker is doing right here. Initially, it may look like he is actually losing the control over the wave state, but he actually held it quite neutral right here. And because the next wave actually stacks up so close to his side, it's so hard for Orianna to now actually hit him, because when the minion waves stack up right here, what happens is that his minions start hitting before the blue side minions, and he can actually utilize this, plus the combination of the fact that he is manipulating the minions auto attacks to actually get himself a slow push. So even though it looks like he loses the push on the first wave, what happens is he actually reaches the level 2 right here, and because he has taken slightly better trades and now has the wave slightly closer towards his side, taking up the lane space here as well, which means that he is now pressuring this Orianna with eventually a really big slow build, eventually building up, which is super, super oppressive and very, very precise wave management. Incredibly hard to do, but it's nice to understand that auto-attacking the enemies can be used as a bit of an investment for a wave state, because you redirect minion aggro, you can drag the minions back towards the lane, which puts you in a position where you can then create the slow build, and the slow build is such a powerful wave state to create favorable trading opportunities and also control of the lane. So the next strategy is about putting the most amount of pressure onto the enemy laner. So what is the strategy that we use to maximize trading windows and put pressure onto the enemies? That is a double 2-wave cycle. So we do a 2-wave crash into another 2-wave crash. Why? Because whenever you do a double 2-wave crash, you will reach up all the level up spikes before the enemy champion. You can create your own trading windows, and especially with a 2-wave crash, what's going to happen is that the wave's not going to get too big that none of your minions die while all of the enemies die and push real fast. No, that means that your minions will still die and the enemy needs to walk up to CS. And what's going to happen at the end of the 2-wave cycle, you can then hit the enemies in the turret while they are still last hitting. So in the perfect example right here, which is from Chovy once again, he's insanely good at doing stuff like this. What we see is that he does this initial, he's building up this initial push on wave 1 right here. And what we see is that he perfectly navigates these trading windows that he's creating by understanding which minions to out-attack and which minions not to out-attack, so the minions' HP dies at different times and the minions' HP are desynced. So he's absolutely nailing it. And because he builds the slow build all the way back here in the lane, he's going to get himself a position where he reaches the level 2 spike before the Yone reaches his. This puts him in a position where he can now zone the Yone off the wave. And Yone is now fighting for space back into the lane to try to get his experience, which means that Chovy in this regard can actually just hit him, trades on him, while Yone is fighting for XP. And now after getting this 2-wave in, what we can see is that we now have an opportunity to harass Yone into the tower. And this is amazing right here because of the fact that we want to be hitting the Yone. And what we then do again is now this wave stacks up a little bit here in the center, and we're going to try to build another 2-wave stack into him. Why do we do that? Well, because now we're going to be hitting level 3 first. A lot of people will after 2-wave crash, will let the wave bounce back, and then they're going to get crashed upon because of the fact that the enemy will then hit level 3 first. But Chovy in this case controls it beautifully, slow pushes this wave right here. And what happens is that in this position, he stacks it up with an extra wave, constantly pressuring Yone whenever he needs to be walking up. And then on the next wave right here, what we'll see is that we're going to be doing a crash on this wave. So we're going to be auto-taking now a little bit more, CSing the minions, AoEing a little bit more, while also hitting the Yone. And you'll see that on this double crash, we're now going to be pressuring the Yone on every single creep again. And the reality is, if we want to keep up this pressure, we're going to be rinse and repeating the same progress. We're going to do a 2-wave stack into a 2-wave stack into a 2-wave stack. Of course, we're vulnerable towards ganks, so make sure you water lean well. But you see how much pressure that's actually being exuded here onto the Yone. So we're going to go back towards my Volt versus Kill, in which that I use that very similar strategy. In this case, it's the new season, so the minions are now a little bit more up to date. But the strategy is still very, very much the same. Like the concept still applies. So we initially have ourselves this nice 2-wave crash into another 2-wave crash. This is the first 2-wave crash right here where we hit the kill. And then what we have to do is we have to make sure that the next minion wave actually gets dragged towards somewhat of the center of the lane. A lot of people make the mistake in which that they either crash too late so the minion wave stacks up right here, and that the new wave starts suiciding into the enemy turret. Or what happens is that they don't understand to drag the new minion towards the center of the lane, which means that they put themselves in a position where it's just really hard to build another 2-wave stack. But because you see that right here, I drag the minion with my aggro back into the lane, I can now force the kill to come back out of her safe space from her turret, which means that I can now utilize this double 2-wave crash into the kill to put myself in a position where I can harass her right here, and massively, especially under the turret. Right, versus D-shield users, it's very important that you get these big chunks of harass off at once instead of slow chips over time, because versus D-shield users, otherwise they're going to be regenerating a lot. So that's why I want these big stacks as well. In this case, usually kill runs D-shield. This one does not. But in the Yone example, Smolder vs. Yone example, it shows perfectly why you want these big crashes, so you can get this big chunk of damage, which is really hard to regenerate for D-shield users. So a lot of people don't really struggle with getting the initial 2-wave crash off, but what they do struggle with is getting that next minion wave in the right position at the right time, dragging it back to the center of the lane, and that when it gets kind of stuck onto the enemy side. And what we're going to be seeing right here is that this is a tool that we can use to kind of prevent that. So what's going to happen is that whenever we're in a position like this, right, your minions will aggro on the turret right here. And what's going to happen is that the new wave will usually aggro upon the wave right here, and it's going to stack right here, which means that the new wave coming in is going to stack up closer towards his side rather than the middle. And the more in the middle it is, the better it is for us, because then we have more space upon the lane to trade upon the Yone and push him back and build a new slow build. So if you ever find yourself in this position where you still got a few leftover minions where after the waves crashed, you want to prevent the next wave from stacking up right here and rather have it dragged back towards mid lane. There's a few ways that we can do that. We can manipulate minion aggro because there is more priority on you hitting a normal minion than... so the priority of minion aggro basically works, okay? It's gonna be prioritizing hitting you rather than a minion hitting turret. Let's put it like that. So if you hit this minion, it will aggro you and it will not go onto these creeps because you are more important than these creeps hitting turret. Very similarly as to if you hit Yone, that's when the minions aggro you as well. So you have two options. You can either hit Yone and drag the minions back. This is what Chovy used in his example. Or what we can do is we can hit the minions right here, which will also draw it back if the Yone doesn't give us the initial out attack. And the way that it looks like is that we just hit the minion right here. You see that we can drag it back towards the center of the lane. And we can now do this beautiful 2-wave cycle again, in which that we get the most amount of trading opportunities onto the enemy laner. So one of the next tricks is going to be dragging the minions towards the side that you want to be playing on / leaning on. So mid laner's job most of the time is to have priority, have lane control, and be early on plays. In this particular situation, I'm going to be playing versus a Lux. Control match versus control match in this case. And I know that my Amumu is making a lot of plays. So I'm going to be trying to support this Amumu in whatever he's doing. And the way that I'm going to make it easy for myself to do so is, number one, I want to be on the side that he's playing. So he's currently playing bot, so I want to be playing bot side. The closer I am to him, the easier I can actually adjust and adapt and play if something happens on the map. So that's exactly what I'm going to be doing. The closer I am to bot, the better it is. Plus, I'm the most safe there, because that's where I have all my vision. If I get ganked through top side, I can easily escape through bot. If I get ganked through bot side, I got my vision there, so I'm hard chilling, and I'm close towards my Mumu. So what I want to do is, instead of the wave going dead center neutral right here, I want the wave slightly towards my side right here. Because if the wave is right here, that's already quite a big difference of where I can stand in the lane safely to actually hit the minions, clear them, and that way I can adapt a little bit towards my Amumu. So what I do is I stand all the way down here, I grab up the push, and what I do is I slightly drag the minions down here, instead of just letting them be dead center, which means that I'm just at 1 inch closer towards my jungler that I would otherwise not be. And it may not seem like much, but this is sometimes a difference maker between you actually getting the kill on the objective, or dying, or staying alive in lane, because of that extra bit of leaning that you're doing is going to be the difference maker between you being able to get to the play or not get to the play, or dying or staying alive. So we help Amumu with the dragon. What we do is we get prio on next wave, and look what my Amumu is doing. Amumu is now going up towards top side. So I'm going to be adapting my strategy depending on where my Amumu is going. So let's see what I do on the next wave. On the next wave, right, I see that my Amumu is playing walking ward for me. I do want to be playing with him. So even though I don't have vision top side, I know that Viego is not there because my Mumu just scouted for me. And look how I drag these minions up towards top side now. And it may not be much, but the difference between the wave here or here is just so massive when it comes to how fast you can actually be there on the play. So I'm heavy leaning, dragging the minions towards the side that I want to be playing upon, which puts me in a position where I always have the first move and take control of the part of the lane where I want to have it, which allows me to support my team. So the next concept we're going to be discussing is how to utilize space control in the lane to get control over the wave states, which means we get control over the trades and also everything else like we discussed before. And a lot of people don't understand how important space is in the lane. What do I mean with space? Well, if you are standing right here and someone's standing right here, it's a lot harder for that someone, if they're the same range as you, to push you off, because if they're walking into you, basically what happens is that your abilities have longer range, because while you're throwing and they're walking into you, what's going to happen is that in the cast time, they're going to be able to walk into your ability. Well, if you walk away and you throw an ability during the cast time, basically the range is shorter, because you have time to walk away while the enemies are casting their ability. So as Ahri, it's very important, if you want to get prio near the game, which is one of the things you definitely want to do as Ahri, is to take up control of the space as early as possible. And if you see that in this case, I'm playing versus an Annie, it's absolutely sleeping, changing his song right here. This happens all the way up until mid Grandmaster, by the way. They're all just sleeping on level 1. And what you'll see is that I just get insta full control of the lane. Game over. I pushed her in. I can now force her to respond all the time. She doesn't have the wave clear to make up for the fact that I have now full mid lane control. It's over for her. By level 1, like she cannot play. And this is something that also happens throughout the rest of the game, where if you can get wave push, you can then translate it into vision. And deep vision, you can then translate it into space in the lane, which allows you to constantly get a priority and force the enemies to respond. So this is also what happens in this game versus Anivia. In this case, I'm playing away. And what I'm doing is I'm using the fact that I force her to respond to my wave to consistently keep up the prio and keep her responding. So what does that look like? Well, I just push the wave in right here. It allows me to find trading opportunities as well, because I've already last hit the minion that she still needs to last hit. And when the new wave comes in, I just instantly start hitting and nuking it. And you see that the pressure upon the Anivia just starts building up very, very, very heavily. And it's almost impossible as a cycle for her to get out of it. Like, how does she break this particular cycle? It's very, very hard for her. So even though I get ganked, which is okay, what I'm going to be doing is I'm continuously trying to keep up the space in the lane, force her to respond so I can nuke her right here under the tower. And it's very, very problematic for her to do so. So I'm constantly deep up in the lane, always contesting the wave when it joins in, which means I can get full prio. I can just go to a random point in the lane right here, and I will fight for priority, and I will stand under her tower, and I will I will pressure her with the wave states right here. I'm constantly grabbing prio, and there's no counterplay because I got the space in the lane. And if she wants to regain space, she needs to walk through me, and I'm just going to QE into EE into WE her, chunk her half her HP bar while AoEing the wave, so still accomplishing my goal. And you'll see that because of that, I get so much power, so much control, so much space in the lane, which allows me to control the wave states. And a lot of people don't understand that your positioning directly translates to how much control that you have over the wave states. So the next concept we're going to be discussing is about setting up crashes on play timers. What does that very specifically mean? Well, if we have a big wave crashing at a time when an objective or a play is happening, what's going to happen is that the enemies are basically in a position where they need to make a decision between, am I getting the wave or am I fighting the objective? So we're going to see the perfect example right here in this World's VODs from Fly versus Gam. What's going to happen is that this Orianna is going to perfectly build a slow push and a crash on the Grubs timer of the objective. So the way that she's going to be doing that right here is she's going to be looking to trade a little bit with the Orianna. Usually this is something that you do in ranged v melee matchups and the other way around as well. So also in melee v ranged. And the way she does that is by keeping 1 minion alive outside of turret range right here. Very, very, very powerful position, because now instead of the wave stacking up in the middle of the lane, it's going to stack up right here, which means it's going to slow push into the Akali because of the location of the wave. This is also going to make it harder for Akali to manage the wave herself because of the fact that our wave stays in a position where we have safety from everything, safety from ganks, safety from trades, and it means that we got more space in the lane, in this case, to play upon and pressure the Akali with. So we see that this beautiful slow build continues. We reach the level up spice soon as well. It's going to be very hard for Akali to tin this as well because of the fact that the main wave is so big and it's just so hard for her to do. And if she tins, we can also just match her tinning. And we see that right now the crash right here is perfectly timed with the neutral objective on the Grubbies. This forces Vi off. Not only does this happen on mid, this also happens on top right here, where they got the wave push out into the neutral objective onto the Grubbies. And that means that the Vi is now choked out of the position because her lanes on the side and on mid aren't able to participate in this play. So by preemptively utilizing your lull states, recognizing when the next play happens, you can set up your wave states in advance to have a position where the enemies need to make a decision between two bad choices and forcing them to make a bad choice regardless. This, of course, can also be used in the other way around. What we see right here is I'm playing Silas into Vladimir. And what we'll find is that the next neutral objective is going to be spawning in 113. So what I want to do is I want to build myself a position where I have full control for the next neutral objective and I can contest it. So the way that I'm going to be approaching that is I'm going to now prepare my wave state for this neutral objective in 113. So what I'm going to do is onto this particular situation, I'm going to make sure that I ping heavily what it's the Rift Herald that I want to be playing that. And you see that I initially hold the wave, I don't touch it, which means that it's now going to slow push into me because the location of the wave is closer towards the enemy turret, and it will slow push into me. And what I can then do is after letting this wave slow push into me for a bit, I get this exact same position where I can hold 1 minion. And I now make sure that the minion wave actually stacks up right here instead of right here. Now, I don't build the biggest slow push because I don't have the time for that, because I didn't set it up 2 minutes in advance, but I only set it up basically 1 minute in advance. But what I can do right now is with the minion wave being closer towards my side, I can now stack it up right here. And because of the fact that I now have the wave closer towards my side, Vladimir now needs to walk up and stand right here if he wants to impact the wave. But if he does that, I can then trade on him, upon him very heavily, which means that I utilize the location of the wave to zone him off the wave state, which means I have full control of the wave state, and I'm now going to be able to time up my crash with the time that my Tarek wants to be playing upon this Rift Herald right here. So the next trick is going to be a little bit controversial, niche, unique, and we've seen this trick being used on the pro games by Chovy. I think it was Silas versus Yone on Gen GT1 in Worlds 2024. And what he does is he actually bumps the minions towards the side. So why would you do this? Why would you bump the minions on wave 1 to the side? Well, you do this to make sure that your minions start hitting slightly later than the enemy minions, which means that because of the fact that your minions will start hitting slightly later than the enemy minions, there's going to be either two things happening. Number one, by reducing minion damage onto the red side minions, you will have a bigger slow push into them. Or what's going to happen is that you are actually going to be able to have an easier time of letting the red minions slow push into us. That's the two most common ways of why the strategy is used. In this case, Victor versus Silas. He uses it to make sure that the Slowbot is slightly slower into red side. That means he can get potentially more hits up on the Silas, or actually drag the minions further back towards him, or actually let the minion wave towards him. Like, it's a combination of the two. You're very flexible, you can adapt. But that's the mindset behind it. I don't use it that often. It's very, very niche. It's also a bit inconsistent, but it's very cool regardless, and you can definitely utilize it to a certain extent.